They tell stories about John Wick in the underworld. The Baba Yaga, the man you send to kill the boogeyman, the ghost who walked away, came back and burned the high table to ashes. But there's one story they don't tell. The one that happened in the space between his retirement and his return. The 72 hours when John Wick disappeared completely. When even Winston couldn't find him. When the Continental went silent and the entire underworld held its breath. This is that story, and it started 3 years after Helen died. John had been trying, really trying, to stay out, to honor her memory by living the life she'd wanted for him. The house was clean, the grass was mowed, dog was healthy and happy. But at night in the silence he could still hear it, the sound of his old life, calling him back like a siren song. Then the package arrived, no return address, no postage, just sitting on his porch at dawn like it had grown there overnight. Inside, wrapped in black silk, was something John hadn't seen in 15 years. A silver coin, not gold, silver. His hands trembled as he held it. On one side, a tree with roots that became serpents. On the other, the Roman numeral 3 and a word in Latin he'd hoped never to see again. Triptolemus, the third garden. Beneath the coin was a note, handwritten, elegant, in a script John recognized immediately because he'd seen it on his wedding invitation. Helen's handwriting. My love, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And there's something I never told you, something you need to know. The garden opens at midnight, Pier 71. Come alone, please. This is the only way to set you free. John's blood went cold. Helen had been dead for 3 years. This was impossible. But the handwriting was perfect. Every loop, every curve, exactly as she wrote. Someone was playing a game, a dangerous game, and John Wick was about to show them why that was a mistake. Pier 71 in Brooklyn was supposed to be abandoned. City condemned it after a fire in 2009. But when John arrived at 11:55, he found it alive with dark purpose. Torches lined the old dock, burning with that same cold white flame he'd seen only once before, in the ceremony where he'd sworn his oath to the Ruska Roma, before the Continental, before the table, back when the underworld still believed in older gods. At the end of the pier stood a door, iron, ancient, covered in symbols that predated Christianity, and standing before it a woman. For one heart-stopping moment, John thought, but no, she was younger, mid-20s, Helen's face but sharper, colder, eyes that had seen violence and learned to love it. Hello, Jonathan, she said. Her voice was Helena's voice, but wrong, like a recording played at the wrong speed. Who are you? John's hand moved inside his jacket, found the Glock, comfort in cold metal. I'm the answer to a question you never asked, she replied. Did you ever wonder about Helen's life before you met her? Where she came from, who she really was. She was a photographer. She lived in a cover story, the woman interrupted. A beautiful lie she told you because she loved you, because she wanted you to have a normal life. But there's no such thing as normal for people like us, is there, John? She stepped aside, gestured to the door. My name is Mira Katsaros, and I'm Helen's sister. John's world tilted. Helen didn't have a sister. Helen didn't have a legal sister, but we shared blood. Same father, different mothers, both raised in the third garden. Mira's smile was sad and sharp as a broken mirror. She escaped when she was 19, gave it all up for a chance at a real life. But the garden never forgets its children, John, and now it wants what she owed. She owed nothing. She was innocent. No one in our world is innocent. Mira pulled out a marker, blood red, sealed with a thumbprint John recognized. Helen's thumbprint. 3 weeks before she died, Helen came to me. She was sick, knew she didn't have long. She gave me this marker and made me promise. If anything ever tried to pull you back into the darkness, I was to bring you here to show you the truth. John's hands clenched into fists. What truth? That the high table you destroyed. That was just the branches, John. The garden is the root, and it's been waiting for you. The door opened. Beyond it, stairs descending into earth and stone and something older than memory. John looked at Mira, at Helen's face twisted by a life his wife had escaped, at the marker that bore his wife's final oath. What's down there? The man who trained Helen. The man who let her go. The man who's been protecting you from the shadows for 7 years. Mira's eyes glistened. Your father-in-law. John descended. The third garden wasn't like the Continental, no luxury, no pretense of civilization. It was older than that. Stone chambers carved from bedrock lit by those same cold flames, symbols on every surface. Some he recognized from the director's theater, from the elder's tent. Others were older still. In the center chamber, a man waited. He sat in a chair made of black wood and silver nails. Ancient, regal, wearing a simple gray suit that somehow looked more dangerous than any armor. His face was weathered, Mediterranean, marked by scars that told stories of centuries. He was old, impossibly old, but his eyes burned with the vitality of youth. Jonathan Jardani Jovanovich Wick, the man said, his voice like stone grinding stone. Baba Yaga, the man who killed his way out of hell. My daughter chose well. Helen never mentioned you, John said, his voice flat, controlled, the way it got before violence. I asked her not to. I gave her the rarest gift our world can offer, freedom, complete severance, new identity, new life, on one condition. The old man stood. That if you ever became what you once were, the monster, the killer, the ghost, she would use the marker I gave her. Bring you to me so I could offer you the same gift. I don't want your gift, not for you. The old man, Helen's father, stepped closer. For her memory. For the life she wanted you to have. He placed something on the stone table between them, a contract, written in blood and sealed with wax. In 3 days, the remnants of the high table will convene. They're rebuilding, reorganizing, creating new rules. And they've marked you, John. Not for death. You've proven that's impossible, but for eternal servitude. They're going to invoke the first law, bind you to the underworld forever, make you their living weapon. John's jaw clenched. Let them try. You can't fight the first law, no one can. It was written before guns, before steel, written in the old language by the old gods. Helen's father's eyes held genuine sadness. But there is a way out. The garden operates outside the table's jurisdiction, under older authority. I can sever you completely. Erase every debt, every marker, every oath. Make you invisible to their world. Why would you do that? Because Helen begged me to. With her last breath, she made me promise. If the darkness came for you again, I would save you from it. His voice cracked just slightly. She was my daughter, John. My light in the endless dark. And she loved you more than life itself. Let me honor that. John looked at the contract, at the promise of freedom written in blood that wasn't his. What's the cost? You have to die. Not literally, Helen's father continued. But John Wick, the name, the legend, the ghost, has to end, completely, publicly. The underworld has to believe you're gone. Only then will they stop hunting you. He pulled out a vial, dark red liquid. A drug developed by the Ruska Roma. You take it, you appear dead for 72 hours. Heartbeat stops, breathing stops, body temperature drops, completely convincing. I'll handle the rest, the body, the cremation, the rumors, and when you wake up, you'll be free. New identity, new life, the one Helen wanted for you. John stared at the vial, at his escape, his freedom, his betrayal of everything he'd fought for. And if I refuse, then in 3 days you'll be bound to them forever. Not as John Wick, the legendary assassin, but as the table's property, their slave, their weapon, everything Helen died to save you from. John picked up the vial, turned it in his fingers. The liquid moved like blood, like mercury, like sin. She really wanted this? Helen's father nodded. More than anything. For a long moment, John said nothing. Then he smiled. A cold, terrible smile that reminded the old man why even gods feared the Baba Yaga. Tell me about this first law. Here's what John Wick understood that Helen's father didn't. Helen hadn't asked him to run. She'd asked him to be saved. And there's only one way to be saved from the underworld. You burn it down until there's nothing left to bind you. The first law, John said, setting the vial down, requires unanimous consent of the remaining table members. All 12. Helen's father's eyes widened. Jonathan, how many are left? I don't know what you're... How many? John's voice was quiet, final. 7, the old man whispered. After you killed the elder and the marquis, 7 remain. Where? They're scattered, hidden, protected by ... Where? Helen's father looked at this man. This monster his daughter had loved and understood. There was no saving John Wick, because John Wick didn't want to be saved, he wanted to be free. And there was only one language he spoke fluently enough to negotiate that freedom. Violence. There's a gathering, he said quietly. In 72 hours, Rome, the old Colosseum. They're meeting to reconstitute the table, to create new rules, new order. Then that's where I'll be. You can't kill them all, Jonathan. Even you. John walked to the door, stopped, looked back. Helen loved me because she thought I could change, thought I could be something other than what I am. His voice was soft, gentle, filled with a sadness deeper than any grave. But she was wrong. Not about me, about change. You don't change by running from what you are, you change by accepting it, mastering it, and using it to protect the people you love. He pulled his Glock, checked the magazine, loaded a round into the chamber. I couldn't save Helen, but I can honor her memory, and she wanted me free, so I'll free myself the only way I know how. Sound of gun cocking, footsteps echoing. Helen's father watched him go, then looked at Mira, who'd been standing in the shadows the whole time. Follow him, he commanded. Father, he's going to... I know what he's going to do. That's why you need to be there, to witness it, to tell the story. The old man's eyes were ancient and sad. Helen chose a monster, but sometimes monsters are the only things that can kill gods. 72 hours later, Rome. The Colosseum at midnight looks like a mouthful of broken teeth. Ancient, hungry, patient. John Wick walked through its corridors like a ghost, except ghosts don't carry 2 Glocks, a Benelli M4, and enough ammunition to start a small war. The high table had gathered in the center of the arena. 7 members, each with their personal guards, their elite assassins, their supernatural protections. 43 people in total, against 1 man. Mira watched from the shadows as John stepped into the firelight. The table members looked up, saw him, and despite their power, despite their guards, despite everything, they were afraid, because they understood what John's presence meant. This wasn't an assassination, this was an execution. Jonathan Wick, the eldest member spoke, her voice echoing off ancient stone. You dare come before... John shot her between the eyes. What happened next wasn't a fight. It was a symphony of violence. John moved like water, like smoke, like inevitability itself. Every shot found its mark. Every movement flowed into the next. The high table's guards were the best in the world, trained since childhood, loyal unto death, armed with the finest weapons money could buy. It didn't matter. John Wick was something they'd never prepared for. Not a man, not a ghost, but a force of nature, a fundamental constant of the underworld. If you take something from John Wick, he will take everything from you. And they'd taken everything. 6 minutes, that's how long it took. 6 minutes and the high table ceased to exist. John stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by bodies, gun smoke, and the echo of his own breathing. His suit was torn, blood, most of it not his, soaked his shirt. But he was alive, and he was free. Mira stepped from the shadows, looked at the carnage, at this man who'd just murdered the pillars of the underworld. Helen would have hated this, she whispered. John lowered his gun. I know. Then why? Because she loved me anyway. He looked at Mira, at Helen's sister, at the last living piece of his wife. And that means something. It has to mean something. He pulled out the silver coin, the one from the garden, placed it on the ground among the bodies. Tell your father the debt is paid. Not his way, my way, but paid in full. What will you do now? Mira asked. John looked up at the stars above the Colosseum. The same stars Helen used to photograph, the same beauty she'd tried so hard to show him. I'm going home, he said, and to feed my dog. And he walked away, not into the darkness, but toward the light of dawn. They found the bodies the next morning, 7 high table members, 36 guards, all dead, and in the center a single silver coin. The underworld understood. The third garden had spoken, the old laws had been invoked. And John Wick, Baba Yaga, the ghost, the legend, was untouchable, protected by authorities older than the table, free from all debts, forever. Winston heard the news over breakfast, smiled into his coffee. Well played, Jonathan, he murmured. Well played indeed. At the Continental's front desk, Karen placed a new entry in the ledger. Under John Wick's name, in the section marked Status, he wrote a single word. Excommunicado lifted, debts paid, account closed. And in John's house in New Jersey, as morning light streamed through the windows, John Wick sat in his kitchen, dog at his feet, coffee in hand, Helen's photo on the table. I'm free now, he whispered to her image. Free to remember you, free to honor you, free to be the man you believed I could be. He touched her face in the photograph. Thank you for loving the monster. Thank you for seeing the man. Outside, the world continued, the underworld rebuilt. New kings rose to claim empty thrones, but John Wick was done, truly done. Not because he'd run from his past, but because he'd ended it. And in that ending found something Helen had always promised him. Peace. In a world of debts and blood oaths, John Wick found the one thing no coin could buy, the freedom to choose who he wanted to be. And sometimes the greatest act of love isn't changing for someone. It's being willing to destroy everything to honor their memory.